Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Egan. I'm Director of Product Management for Literacy at Sadlier Publishing Company. And we are so excited today to have you with us for our webinar for our series of webinars. So I'm glad to have you today. Today's webinar is the unique aspects of the Common Core, putting them into practice in today's classroom. And our guest presenter is Dr. Lesley Morrow. But before we get started, I want to go through a couple of housekeeping items. All your phones will be placed on mute so that it can decrease the background noise for the presenter. You'll be able to hear her more clearly. Also, there will be a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. So if you have a question during the presentation, please write it in the chat box on the right-hand side of in your control panel. If you expand the chat box, you can write in a question and we'll retrieve it and ask Lesley at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, let me introduce Dr. Lesley Morrow. Lesley is a distinguished professor of literacy at Rutgers University's Graduate School of Education, where she is also the coordinator of the literacy program. She began her career as a classroom teacher and then became a reading specialist. Later, she received her Ph.D. from Fordham University in New York City. Dr. Morrow is the author of more than 300 publications, including journal articles, book chapters, and professional books, as well as the Sadlier Phonics series. She was the recipient of the IRA Outstanding Teacher Educator Award and Fordham University's Alumni Award for Outstanding Achievement. Dr. Morrow has been a member of the Board of Directors of IRA and served as president of the organization from 2003 to 2004. Dr. Morrow was elected to the Reading Hall of Fame in 2006. Dr. Morrow, thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to your presentation. I'm going to make you presenter now, Lesley.
Okay. Am I okay, Laura?
Yep, if you have yep, I see your screen. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Hi, everybody. It's nice to have you with me this afternoon, and I hope that I can explain or verify some things that you already know about Common Core. I am talking about early literacy, so we're talking about K through about grade 4. So here we go. The first thing about the Common Core standards is not to forget that it's really all about good instruction. And so we just use a basic lesson plan with children like we use all the time, with previewing some background knowledge, modeling, using some explicit scaffolding, supportive practice, then letting the children have some independent practice, some sort of summary, and then applying. And I'll just show you a little explanation of this by doing a little lesson, so to speak. I'm going to be sharing a story with you called Extreme Animals. And the lesson will fulfill many Common Core state standards. This is true of these standards. It's rarely that you're going to be doing one at a time. The ones that I'm going to do are from informational reading, craft and structure number 4, if you happen to have your standards with you, from K through 3. There will also be integration of knowledge and ideas. That's also from reading informational literature number 9 for grades K to 3. And be comparing and contrasting and looking for similarities and differences. So while this story is being watched, I'm not going to tell it, you're going to be reading it and watching it, I want you to find the word that belongs on each page afterwards. And I'll repeat these so that you can go back. And we're not going to really do this, but these would be the kinds of things that would satisfy those standards I just spoke about. Think of another word you could say in the sentence for the word in red. We're going to think about comparing the animals to each other, such as you will see a giraffe that is very tall and a whale shark that is very large. Think about something these animals have in common, such as the giraffe and the cheetahs both have spots. And if you were really doing this, I would ask you to have other books about these animals in your classroom. And partners would select a book about one of the animals and see how it is discussed in a similar or different manner and report on what else that you have learned about them. And this would be the relatively simple beginning story. So here are extreme animals. These are the words that you will be seeing in red on the pages that we will be talking about their definitions and thinking of other words we could use in their place. Giraffes are the tallest. They live in Africa. They eat from treetops. Cheetahs are the fastest. They are sprinters. They have good eyesight. Parakeets are talkative. They live in Australia. A whale shark is the largest fish. Can grow as long as a school bus. Peregrine falcon is the fastest. He dives through the air to catch its prey. A golden orb weaver is the largest and the strongest web. They use their silk to make webs. Tigers are the largest cats. Striped fur helps to camouflage while hunting. Millipede equals the most legs, but it does not have 1,000. So if you will look back and think about the pictures that we saw, think about what treetops go with: largest, sprinters, talkative, prey, strongest, silk, camouflage. And then I might ask you to say a different word for each of these. And then I might ask you to compare the animals to each other, such as the giraffe, that's the tallest, and the whale, that's the largest. Think about something these animals have in common, such as giraffes and cheetahs have spots. And then with other books and a partner, and the books are about one of the animals. Look for more information and what they say that is similar and different, and report on what else you learned. So that would be considered a good lesson. It actually had sound effects, but they're not working on the webinar. I'm using technology and an informational text, which is very popular with these Common Core State standards. And I used standards that are asking the children to think deeply and analytically, even though I'm using a very simple text. So what do we know about these standards? Well, they're not a curriculum, but they're a guide for reform. They've been adopted in about 45 states, and there will be assessment to follow, and I'm guessing those other states will join. So what do we know more about them? They're a spiral staircase. This is a feature I really like. A skill in kindergarten under narrative literature, such as with prompting and support, identify character, setting, and major events in a story. The same skill in first grade is describe characters, setting, and major event in a story using key details. The same skill in second grade is describe how characters in a story respond to major events and challenges. You see, it's exactly the same skill in K1 and 2, but it's a little more difficult. So in essence, we're not dealing with quite as many skills as we had in the past, but we're dealing deeper. An activity that I might have you do if we had the time was to look at a kindergarten skill in literature, K5, standards and compare the kindergarten to the first and the second, third, fourth, fifth, and how they are different and deeper and closer reading. That's the kind of terminology that they're using. With the standards, we talk a lot about that language arts are integrated with each other. In other words, we're teaching listening, speaking, reading, and writing all together. This is a hard one to deal with, and I'll get into how you can deal with it as we get further, but it's an important one. There is an emphasis, again, on critical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration. And teachers need to think about children reading and hearing complex text. The standards talk about doing a lot of reading, more than children are doing now. And standards talk about close, deep reading, and again, a lot of it. So I'm going to look in a minute after I share this slide how it might look in a classroom. It's important to remember that reading is a tool to learn other things. It's not a content area, it's a skill. To learn to read, you must read to learn, and children must think about it that way. We also have to think about reading being relevant, interesting, and motivating. 50% of what you read needs to be informational text, and 50% of what you read should be narrative. When teaching reading as a skill, without the meaning of interesting ideas from science and social studies, for example, reading lacks relevance, and this is particularly true the older the children get. Therefore, reading must happen all day and in every subject, whether it's art, music, math, science, social studies, phys ed, or play, and who's ever teaching any of those things needs to think that they're teaching reading. So this is a book that the Common Core State Standards would love. It's informational text. I haven't particularly attached it to a particular standard, but I just wanted to share with you the kind of books that they really are looking for our children to be exposed to gain information and that are interesting and motivated. It's called The Red-Eyed Tree Frog. Morning comes to the rainforest, but the red-eyed tree frog has been asleep all day. It wakes up hungry. What will it eat? The frog is hungry, but it will not eat the ant. Something moves near the frog. The snake flicks its tongue. It tastes frog in the air. Look out, frog. Will it eat the caterpillar? No, the caterpillar is poisonous. Here's an iguana. Frogs do not eat iguanas. Do iguanas eat frogs? The red-eyed tree frog does not wait to find out. What does the frog see on the leaf? Jump. A moth. Perfect. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The tree frog is no longer hungry. Climbs onto a leaf and goes to sleep as morning comes to the rainforest. This particular book has wonderful pictures that some I look at as saying they're kind of yucky looking, like that one. I don't like what his eyes look like, but everything is just so, in terms of children will say so much about this, and that's what we're looking for them to do. And then there's always extra information at the end of an informational text. The new standards want you to use technology. iPads, websites, smart boards, wikis, Dropboxes, Google Docs. Obviously, these are on computers, sound, video, internet, online instruction. And there's a big push for teachers to learn how to use these. There will be assessment. It is coming next year as a pilot to several states. It is coming into New Jersey, where I live. There are two different types of assessment, or companies, if you will. One is called PARC and the other is called Smarter. I'm sure they're very similar. And the tests will start as pilots in 2013. I put the websites there, but you could easily Google them to to see what they're like. I'm not talking about assessment today, but I just wanted to mention this, that they're coming soon, and this is what I'll tell you about them. Very interested in the child's formative assessment to plan instruction. Assessment is linked to the standards, follows a child's achievement in relationship to themselves, follows the child in relationship to their group, in other words, compared to their class, and to select groups for explicit instruction. Select areas of need and competence across the whole group to adjust the curriculum if needed. So this is very much not only about the group, but the individual child and what they need. Daily, we need to do all that kind of reading and writing all day long with our children to succeed. Whole group, small group, one-on-one, guided, independent, shared, interactive content. This is a necessity. So I'm going to take you through a morning in a language arts block that you might be very familiar with and point out what they're doing that is standards-based. When they come in the morning, they choose independent self-selected reading. The choice is very important. These two children, I think in this class, they happen to be reading books about Clifford, and they're both going back to them and repeating. But they are allowed to choose whatever level they wish. Independent activities leading to reading in content areas, another independent activity. And there are books on that table. Hopefully he will be motivated to read, and they're there on purpose so we can integrate. In your morning meeting, there is a morning message, and a specific skill, such as vocabulary here, is being taught in the morning message. And it can be theme related. If this class is studying animals, it might have something to do with developing vocabulary about rainforest animals, for example. But this would very much be Common Core related. We read books to children aloud in the morning meeting. Should be done daily, should be done at grade level or actually above. When the teacher reads to the children, she wants to read, or he wants to read, challenging things they can comprehend and hear good vocabulary, so it raises them up. She's reading a narrative story, and if we're talking about animals, the book is about animals. So then they can talk critically about feelings, experiences, and what they would do, and that is actually language from the standards. On another day, the teacher would read an expository text based on the theme with information. The book is a little above the children's level, grade level, not reading level, grade level. So if this is second grade, she might be reading a book that's third grade, because they can critically discuss, compare and contrast, and connect to life and analyze. And so we want to use material that will challenge them. There often are many skill lessons early in the day, and so she is doing a foundational skill, which is word work. And one thing that is not very different about the standards is the foundational skills. If anything, less foundational skills are listed than more. Foundational skills are also the third standard, which worries me a little bit. And literature is really promoted, which is wonderful. But don't lose sight of the fact that foundational skills are the same. They must be taught explicitly through K1, 2, and then we get into more word work in grade 3 if children are to succeed in reading. So because they haven't been given a major spot and they've been cut down a little, doesn't mean you cut down on them. Also, there will be a mini comprehension lesson. It's about retelling. The book is at grade level, and they're going to be talking about story structure elements in their retelling. This might be considered reading workshop, where a specific reading skill is being taught, and then the children get to partner read. If they choose that, there's some more partner reading going on here, and some more partner reading going on here, and some independent reading with manipulatives to help remember the story and comprehension. This also goes with reading workshop to practice the skill that you were just taught, which I mentioned was retelling and story structure. When the children are settled, there are more stations or centers available for them during this period of time. We often call them the Daily Five, but there's vocabulary activities, word study activities, listening comprehension, writing, and the library corner for independent reading, which they're already doing. They're doing this because they're going to work independently, and the teacher is going to take them in guided reading small groups. And I'm sure you're familiar with Literacy Center management charts. Well, we do it similarly, but we make sure we have the skills that we need in them for the children, and that these children know these activities really well, and that they're practicing activities that they have learned, and there's nothing in them that is too difficult for them that you haven't taught, because it has to be extremely well organized and structured. So here we have the children getting organized with foundational skills, and they're using word wheels. And here they're rolling the dice, and they're going to be blending using onsets and rhymes. And this is almost like a word wall, where we're making words using the initial sound and endings in the pocket chart. And she's doing some independent reading with a book that is of tremendous interest to her, because she doesn't have any teeth, and neither does the child in the book. At that point, the teacher can then start taking her small groups for guided reading, and now the children are using leveled books at their instructional level. This is important. If you've noticed, we've got 3 different levels of reading. Above grade level for the read aloud, at grade level for a comprehension lesson, and at instructional level for explicit instruction in guided reading. She has 4 differentiated groups by achievement. Now, if it happens that you have thematic and it's about animals, and all the books can be about animals that are leveled to the children, that's terrific, but that's not going to happen for a while. So whatever little books that you have will work. During guided reading, she's doing formative assessment and summative assessment. And she may also be doing a running record. She's going to listen to the children read orally together, no round robin at all. And they will work on whatever skills that group needs. This is a kindergarten guided reading group. They'll be working on the alphabet. These children are probably working on more comprehension or foundational skills and writing. There is no set rule as to what happens in a guided reading lesson. It's what those children need at grade level. At some other time during the day, because the children have been intensely and explicitly involved, there will be writing workshops. And again, you can utilize your themes and your standards. So you might be doing something like expository writing, which is in the writing standards section, where children are learning how to write an expository text and all about book. And they'll have chapters and headings and a table of contents. And the first page says a how-to page. And what it is it's all about dogs. And the first page just says, how do you take care of a dog? And then children write whatever they wish to write there. You wash it, you feed it, you walk it. The next page says, name parts of a dog. And so there are legs and a tail and a head and a body. A different kind of a thing page, what kind of dogs are there? Well, they're big and little and different colors, and there's poodles and dachshunds and so on. And fun facts, what else do you know about dogs? And it's whatever they sneeze, they like to dig in the ground, they roll over, whatever they want to do. But again, the standards are very specific for learning. Maybe it's write a play. And these children wrote, we are gathered here today to join these wonderful people in holy matrimony. Sylvia, do you take Jim to be your awful wedded husband? Jim, do you take Sylvia to be your awful wedded wife? May we have the ring? Sylvia put the rings on Jim's finger. Jim put the ring on Sylvia's finger. I now pronounce you man and wife. You may go and kiss the bride. And after they write, they perform, because we know that writing must have an audience in order for the children who are writing to see that there is a purpose. This is response to literature. You learn the pattern of the book, and then you write your own book. This is My Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day by a first grader whose name is Loretta. She is the bigger child. Essie bit me. I was mad. She got yelled at. I was happy, but my arm still hurt. And notice the teeth on the biter. First graders are very egocentric, and this just gives you they're really not children who are that different in size. But, of course, Loretta needed to make herself big. This is in a fourth grade with the same book. It was in the Upper West Side of New York City in a place where a lot of children who live in shelters live. And this child wrote, I had a fight with a kid who had a knife. He tried to poke me with it. The teacher stopped it. I was glad she stopped it. So you can use these with any grade levels, which is what the standards do, but you get very different responses. Now I want you to watch this because this is an interesting standards kind of activity. It is social studies, and it is response to literature, and it actually is for, you'll see, older children. Brown bear, what do you see? I see a red bird looking at me. Red bird, what do you see? I see a yellow duck looking at me. Yellow duck, what do you see? I see a blue horse looking at me. Blue horse, what do you see? I see a green frog looking at me. Green frog, what do you see? I see a purple cat looking at me. Purple cat, what do you see? I see a white dog looking at me. Well, it's not the white dog, it's the black sheep, and so on. This also can be used with very young children because the tracking of the print is quite useful. So we're going to the end, and the assignment was at the beginning, we've been studying about interesting cities throughout the United States. And all of you have a different city you've been working on. Use the pattern of the book and write what you know about your city. And this child wrote, New York, what do you see? I see the Empire State Building looking at me. Empire State Building, what do you see? I see the Statue of Liberty looking at me. Liberty Lady, what do you see? I see Central Park looking at me. Central Park, what do you see? I see Times Square looking at me. Times Square, what do you see? I see Broadway looking at me. Broadway, what do you see? I see the Museum of Art looking at me. Train, what do you see? I hope you are stopping to pick up me. Sightseeing, as you can see, gets everyone tired, including me. So not only, this is true integration. It's social studies, it's using patterns of children's books and writing, and putting them all together. Now, possibly in the past, the teacher might not thought that this was a lesson on writing, skills. But there is a standard that would have that would work for this particular activity. And that's what teachers need to do in social studies, in science. They need to look at the standards. So what is new about them? They're striving for reaching higher levels of text complexity, with whole groups using grade-level text and reading varied text. Children need to read all these kinds of text because we don't know who will like what. And you need to investigate the internet, and I'm going to mention 3 free programs that are terrific. One is called Blogster, where a child can make a video of themselves. No, it's actually just a page, and their picture goes on it, and they can pick music and other visuals to put on that page to talk about themselves or something else. Automoto actually is a video. It's also free that you can make using your telephone. And Wall Wisher is almost like Post-its where you discuss the book and children can post their questions and responses and go look at other children's tests and responses. You must have these kinds of books available, like narrative literature that's easy and hard, and songs that are books, and poetry. This is one of my favorite poems by Brod Baggart. And again, I've been carefully choosing my texts based on relevance and interest for children. I love this little booger, all shiny green and black. You can hold it for a minute, but I want my booger back. It stays right where I put it. It sure knows how to stick. And if it gets too dry, it just needs a little lick. I can hold it on my finger. I can flick it in the air. I can stick it underneath a desk or underneath a chair. I can make a ball and roll it just to see which way it goes. I love this booger anywhere except inside my nose. And if you could picture what I was doing while I was reading this, it adds to the poetry. And every child in your class is going to want to read it and act it out as well. But we don't put our fingers in our nose. We put it on the side of our nose to have the effect. You want to have multicultural text that are folk tales. You want to have fables and series books. If you read one Madeline, you might want to read another one, magazines, and then we need our informational books, and as many of them as we have in narrative. Alpha Bakery was a book I had in a classroom in an at-risk community, and Yasin, a second grader, would pick it up regularly and read it, and he was on the B page, and he said to his teacher, "Mrs. Palovitz, do you have chocolate at home?" And she said yes. And he said, "Do you have eggs at home?" She said yes. "Do you have flour at home?" She said yes. He said, "Good, because that's what you need to make brownies. You bring them in tomorrow so we can have brownies." When he got on the C page, he said, "Mrs. Palovitz, you got carrots at home?" Yasin was one of 3 children being taken care of by an elderly grandmother who was sick a lot of the time. His brother and sister, one was in K and one was in 1, and he was in 2. He had been retained. He was the kind of child who walked to back to school night. He was a bused child, and he walked, which means he was more than a mile away from the school, during Eastern Standard Time, which means it was November and dark out, because he knew no one else would go, and he went to first grade and kindergarten for his sister and brother. He was also a child who was seen at midnight in ShopRite buying food for the house, because he was the one that ran the house. So for someone to make something for him was very special. And that's why he picked the book. I would have picked a motorcycle book or a football book. So you need to have tons of stuff around. Well, talking about food, here's another poem by that particular author again. He is fabulous. Look him up, Brod Baggart. It's called the Cookie Journal, and it's informational text, and it is accurate. I'm just a cookie on a plate awaiting every cookie state. Someone bit me, oh, the fear. Holy smoke, it's dark in here. Tooth enamel sharp and white, tearing, grinding left and right, saliva swishing all around. Oh no, I think I'm going down. This esophagus thing is a very tight space. It starts in the neck right under the face, a breathing, squeezing kind of hose that's deep into a stomach goes. Feel the acid, feel the burn. This stomach just began to churn. I'm turning to liquid, I'm turning to gas. Digestion progression is terribly fast. I'm slowing down in a gooey soup. Those small intestine loop-de-loop. Now large intestine. Oh, at last I'm turning back to a solid mass. But something has begun to smash, and now I'm falling, splash. I'm floating in a big white well. Oh, disgusting, what a smell. It's what our bodies love to do, turning cookies into poo. I hope you're laughing and not upset by my poetry, but if you want kids to read, you got to read relevant stuff. So we have more informational text and different kinds of books that they can sample, so there is something for everyone. And we even have children's literature about math. We want our classrooms to have literacy centers so that children have access to books and can read the many different types and levels that I talked about. During independent reading, we do not determine levels. And there's a writing center right by it with all kinds of paper and different kinds of pens and pencil. And we teach our children how to go onto the internet to get information to write. We have open space shelving for the thematic books and pillows and rugs and rocking chairs. And these books will change often depending upon the theme. Books stored by genre. And this is one of the final points I want to make. In self-contained classrooms and departmental settings, and content area teachers will need to plan together because they must be doing similar thematic units in art, music, and physical ed, or helping the classroom teacher at the same time. The purpose is to provide a coherent program in content and to support the student's ability to apply literacy in content. How can this be done? What does it look like? The first part of what I talked about, I think of first thing in the morning, not terribly different from what you probably or hopefully are already doing in explicit instruction. We don't want to lose that. But then typically in the afternoon, we might get into social studies and science, and there's art and there's phys ed, and you should be thinking, all of these other teachers need to be thinking, that this is reading instruction. This is not social studies and science, and we must apply the standards to what we do. So you need to collaborate, select a theme by grade level, list the information for the theme, and select key language arts literacy goals to learn from the standards. You need a lot of books in your room, all the kinds that I talked about, and a lot of different levels about the theme, if it should be about animals or volcanoes. Begin the theme with something exciting like a science experiment or a field trip that is actual or virtual to promote interest. Again, discussion, create background knowledge, and predict or hypothesize what will be learned. Let it be yucky or, cutting up worms or frogs or whatever. Students and teachers develop questions for the investigation, and the lists can be revised and added to. So here's a classroom that doesn't live far from the ocean, although many of these children had never been to the ocean because it was different gang territory than where they lived. And the teacher, after they walked to the ocean and motivated interest in the sand and the shells and the water, they posed these questions. What is in the ocean? What do we do with what is in the ocean? And why do we need to have an ocean? The teacher brought sand in the classroom for an experiment, a blue cloth to look like water. The children picked up shells to scatter around, and she provided many books of many genres, both narrative and expository, and maybe a magazine, and figures of sea creatures. And here's a child who's getting to investigate what's on the blue water. What kind of shell is this? Well, there's going to be a book to read and find out. Students post questions about what they would like to learn about the sea. The teachers provide activities to answer the questions, such as doing an experiment. And the results of this particular classroom was 25 new vocabulary words that you can see at the bottom of the screen. Theirs is on the yellow paper. I typed them out for you. This was actually from a kindergarten. Students respond with oral reports, written reports, book reports, research found on the internet. There are read-alouds and partner readings. Students retell the summary for culminating activity. They create a video with Automoto to present to other classes about the sea. The following experiences were on the video: the trip to the ocean, the experiments, some read-alouds, the oral book reports. Students' collages about the sea are displayed, made of sand and shells, and a song is sung about the sea, which can be by the sea. And the results are demonstration of learning content by the sea using several activities to learn information. And I think I have to stop there, Laura. Am I right?
Yeah, we're good. If you want to just wrap it up, Lesley.
Yeah, this is just another classroom that have, they're doing insects, and you can see how they get into the information, and again, using for science, using graphic organizers, and they made in art beautiful bumblebees and dragonflies, and you can see these kindergarten children, some of them wrote their own. And I will stop here with some proverbs for teachers. A Japanese proverb is, 1,000 days of diligent study can't compete to one day with an excellent teacher. And an American proverb, not really, is know your stuff. That means your standards. Know who you are stuffing. That means differentiate your instruction and stuff elegantly. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesley. That's lovely humor along the way and a lot of information that we can hold close and practice. I just want to remind everybody that there is a chat box on your control panel, and if you have a question for Lesley, please type it in. Lesley, we have a few questions, so let me go ahead and start reading them one by one. The first question is, where is the phonics in the Common Core state standards?
It's where it's always been. It's an explicit piece of instruction in K1, 2, and in 3 if needed, in a mini lesson early in the day. And then embed it spontaneously in social studies and science. If you happen to be teaching a word, a digraph or a diphthong or whatever, and it shows up in a unit in social studies or science, like chicken, the CH digraph, then point it out. So it's really not much different. It's the only standard that hasn't changed a lot. But don't forget to use it.
Okay, thank you. The next question. Can I still use my leveled readers with the Common Core standards with all the emphasis on complexity of text?
Okay, let me just say something about, no one has really explained how to teach the standards. They just said, here they are. People are hypothesizing and trying to analyze. And my personal opinion, and those of other colleagues, because I've been doing a lot of studying and workshops, and I just finished to books that are in press on the Common Core is that absolutely we would use level text during guided reading instruction for achievement, and we don't have to worry about them ever again during the day. I would not suggest that you level text during independent reading. Just let them pick whatever they want, because we want them to pick some difficult stuff, and they can pick easy stuff. But the time we use level text is the time when they always were used and should be used, and the only time they should be used is during guided reading for achievement.
Great. What are the advantages of using thematic units?
Well, I just think they add relevance and interest to the classroom. When children come home from school and their parents ask them what they did, they usually say nothing. And that's when the day is typically mundane. But if they do dissect a frog, or they study worms, or whatever it might be, water experiments and so on, they get excited and they get new vocabulary. One of the major sources of vocabulary is thematic units. The other thing is they can provide collaboration between classrooms with sharing materials and coordinate the specials and use them as if they were reading instruction by putting standards onto everything you do.
Great. One more question. It comes from a high school teacher. How can I best scaffold the reading of struggling students in my English language arts classes? I only see the students for an hour and a half every day for half the year on a block schedule. So how can I increase their reading while still maintaining adherence to my state, which is Tennessee, standardized tests that are part of my accountability?
Well, I wish I could answer that question, because then we'd have the answers to all the questions. Your struggling readers need to feel like they are a part of the class and they are engaged in good fun stuff too. If you do an activity, something like I did with Brown Bear, you may not want to use that, or something else. You scaffold with the whole class. You still, in the upper grades, are going to read to them. Your strugglers can listen and understand. So that's an important whole class activity. And get into the theme stuff and give different activities on the theme that are appropriate for the level of reading. I have seen many teachers in using thematic material, or let's say that they're studying the Diary of Anne Frank, and you might have a photograph walk of the pictures from that time. And then there are different activities for different groups, meaning the high achievers, the middle kids, and the strugglers. And you need different leveled texts of that particular book or other readings about those times, so everyone can be involved. And so it's differentiating your instruction, and again, it's making stuff relevant and interesting that's going to mean something to them. Otherwise, the strugglers are definitely not going to read. We tend to want to skill our strugglers, and it doesn't help that much. It just turns them off more. I'm not suggesting that you don't, but you need to give them stuff that they can read and enjoy and have fun with in their activities. And then you go to them as a group and scaffold there, because your other groups are working independently.
That's great. Thank you, Lesley, for all your information this afternoon. And thank you, everyone that has attended this webinar. We will be sending you an email with the link to the recording of the webinar, and we hope that if you have any questions, you let us know. If you're interested in any of the Sadlier books, let us know. And again, Lesley, thank you for your time this afternoon. So that's all for today. We'll be in touch with more webinars as part of our series, and we wish you all a good evening. Bye now.